Okay, I owe everyone an apology and a lot of excuses. So my goal was to make this weekly, like my cadence to be weekly. And it still is my ultimate goal, but what had happened is I went to New York City for the weekend. So obviously I just like didn't have enough time. And then I came back and it was like holiday event after holiday event after holiday event. So I could never really find the time, if I'm being honest. And then what the Rays were doing, it just seemed like if I hopped on to talk about it, something else would happen. Granted, I think that that's still a possibility, very much a possibility after this episode and the upcoming days or weeks. Obviously, I am still going to try to do the weekly posting, but I don't know. I just couldn't find the right time. And I'm to the point now where I feel like there's enough to talk about that even if there is a looming move, that in and of itself will be a whole thing. So like, why not just recap what we've missed, what I've missed? And I want to say, I do have notes here. Like, I very much planned on doing an episode last week, but it clearly didn't happen. No excuses. I mean, I'm full of them. I'm going over my notes before logging on here, and I'm going over my notes from last week, like when I thought I was going to do an episode last week. And it's really interesting to me because this is obviously before the big trades that came this week. And so reading my notes from last week before we knew anything, it kind of foreshadows what happened. And I do feel like that is a little helpful for people who are just, I feel like a lot of fans, and I don't want to say casual fans, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. They have every right to be emotional about the trades and the moves that happened, of course. But I find that it really helps me personally to kind of look at the full picture and kind of how everything is intertwined and connected. It helps lessen the blow, if you will. You're totally entitled to feel the way that you do about if it was your favorite player that was moved or a player that you really loved, or if it just like doesn't make sense in your head and that's why you're struggling with it. I feel like that's the least I can do is just to kind of show you what and why I think a lot of things happened this past week. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through my notes that I was going to use last weekend and then partner with my upcoming notes for this week that I have and just kind of how it's all intertwined. Like it honestly helps a lot to see how this all flowed together. So now I know what you might be thinking. This past week, the last few days felt like a teardown, but we're gonna talk through it. I think the Rays MO thus far has been how can we raise the floor, not chase a ceiling, if that makes sense. So I didn't get to talk about the Steven Matz signing, and I like this move. He's a veteran guy. He has experience as a starter and a reliever, but I believe they're all on the same page that he's probably going to fit into the rotation. I think that he's going to stabilize the innings and kind of help protect the younger arms. At the time of this, I feel like we didn't really know the status of McClanahan, and we still don't. I guess we have gotten updates that he's going to start throwing off the mound in mid-January, that he feels fully recovered and all of that. And that's good until he kind of throws off the mound and he gets going. I want to believe that he's fine. Don't get me wrong. Like we all want to believe that he's fine, but just saying like, oh, he's fully healed and he's feeling well and he's not been on the mound yet. Let me get a few bullpen sessions and then kind of we'll reassess. I did like the Steven Matz signing, and I had wrote that this creates flexibility if someone else gets moved or breaks down. Okay. Kind of foreshadowing what's to come. I had no idea what was to come, but anyway, I think I even wrote reduces pressure on Baz and Pepio. Yeah, I guess it did. And then buys time for McClanahan's recovery. Like I said, I still feel like the question mark isn't as glaring as it used to be, but there's still a question mark there, and I'm afraid of it. And I wrote, allows the Rays to consider trading from pitching depth, but not force it. I don't feel like overall they have this mindset of like, we must do this. We must act out of desperation. I think with these deals, if they present themselves and if they make sense, they're comfortable making the move. We'll get to that. Even with the Matz signing, though, I do still think that they're open to a veteran arm, which I think is very interesting to say that when we hadn't touched our rotation when I wrote this, because now it's setting you up. You've moved Baz, which we'll get to, and so I still think there's a chance that they're seeking someone like a Zach Littell. Maybe, I hate to throw the name out there, Zach Eflin, because I know how fans feel about that situation. I still think that that's in the cards for them. And I even wrote or using pitching as currency. How did she know? I didn't. I was just speculating, or at least I was looking at it from a very rational mindset of like, okay, now they can shuffle arms or they can move arms, and they ended up moving a arm. 2 arms technically, but rotation wise 1. So the outfield has been the issue. Okay, inconsistent offense, below what the Rays play in terms of defense and how much they prioritize defense, below that, and then injuries knock them out. I've talked about this in past episodes, but in a perfect world, I don't want to use the word perfect world, but, we possibly don't see Jake Mangum or Chandler Simpson last season, Cameron Meisner. Those names aren't even something that I feel like the average fan would have even known had that outfield stayed healthy. But they dropped like flies so much that you got to see Jake Mangum and Chandler Simpson on the same roster and playing pretty much every day because of the injuries. And that is an interesting, put a pin in that, because we're going to obviously circle back to what happened with Jake. Anywho, so the Rays did sign a couple guys. I think I've talked about Jake Fraley in the past. The Rays have had history with him. They know him well. He's another left-handed at bat. Some people are kind of feeling like he's a little bit redundant, which he might be. But again, when I talk about the injuries, okay, the more the merrier right now, and then we'll kind of just figure out how it all shakes out, because I feel like this is all shaping up to be a lot of competitiveness. I was talking about before, if the Rays brought in someone for short so that there was a bit of a competitive feel for getting that shortstop position, I would love that. It definitely feels that way in the outfield. I also feel like maybe they're stacking up for another move regarding someone that they already have on the roster, but we will get to that. One of those people, I had a whole segment on Josh. I think it's very telling that the Rays continue to believe in him, and I've said that maybe I have gotten tired of the Josh Lowe experiment, because I do like Josh, and it's not that. It's just, we saw what he did in 2023, and it was spectacular, and it was great. 2024 didn't happen. 2025 didn't happen. The oblique thing still keeps flaring up, and it's just kind of like when you're already struggling so much in the outfield, bringing him up and just being like, it's still in him and we can do it. It's gotten old and tiresome, which stinks, because like we all want to believe that Josh Lowe can be that version of himself. But at some point we can't just keep hoping, I guess. And like I said, it's such a glaring issue in the outfield as a whole and in all 3 positions. So it's not just we're testing this out here in the corner or center or whatever. It's all 3, and then you're gambling on he's going to bounce back. Now, the Rays have said that they believe that he still has that 2023 version in himself, and that's great. But I do think that some of these moves are either kind of positioning themselves for potential injuries that the outfield will have, competition in the outfield, or they're going to make a move. I do think there's a chance that they make a move in the outfield that might have a Josh Lowe in the move, or, spring training becomes a very decisive tryout, if you will. Okay, you guys are gonna love this because I had I had a segment labeled Brandon Lowe Trade Chatter. Okay, I wrote final option year. He's a power at second base, which is rare. He had 31 home runs, was it last year? Contract is like not that bad. And that's why Neander was really good about it. He said this, and I remind you, this is probably 2 weeks ago that I wrote these, maybe a week and a half ago. Teams are calling. The Rays were not, okay. And I said this a little bit earlier. You got to kind of follow the dots here. The Rays were not actively shopping him. Teams were calling. And the Rays said they were comfortable with keeping him because, again, that contract was reasonable, $11.5 million. Yes, they're on budget constraints. It's the Rays. And, we've talked about that ad exhaustion. And I'm so sorry that I keep bringing it up. But I just feel like a lot of people talk about the Rays payroll and they're missing so much context that it just drives me insane. But anyway, with that being said, I wrote all of those things. He's not being shopped. They are comfortable keeping him. They were comfortable keeping that $11.5 million contract, although it was his last year in his contract. Also, I don't think enough people consider this, and a few of my friends have said it. And I didn't even think about this because I admittedly have never played baseball, watched a lot of it, but I don't even think, or I wasn't thinking about, Brandon Lowe. I took credit for his health in 2025 because I was praying hard on it and just kind of really focused on if Bilal can stay healthy, Bilal stay healthy, like really, really wanted that for him. And it worked out. I mean, he had that injury stint around the All-Star break and that was fine in comparison to kind of the past injuries that we've dealt with him made sense. And he was able to finish out the season and all things were great. I never really thought about how playing on turf versus playing on the real grass there at Steinbrenner probably helped him out tremendously. He does have a lingering back issue. We've went through many IL stints with him, 2 and 2 together. And so I wish I would have considered this as like one of the thoughts behind Bilal heading back to the Trop. Now, I'm sad personally we'll never see, well, not never, but, Bilal won't play a home game again at Tropicana Field. You never knew it was your last one when it happened anyway. But anyway, that's kind of a side tangent that maybe we'll get back to. But I also wrote, trading him creates a power hole. It does, simply. And it does save money, but not a ton, which I think is, again, interesting because everyone, when the trade went through, now I hadn't really gotten to what happened. So before I go down that slope, the Rays traded Brandon Lowe to the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was a 3-team trade in which they got 2 players back from the Astros. We'll get closer to that. But in that trade as well was Bilal, Jake Mangum, and Mason Montgomery, who I like all 3 of those guys. Like, I'm not saying it was an easy move. Just some context because I just didn't directly say it. Any deal would need to clearly improve the roster, not just reshuffle it. I like what you're saying, Tampa Bay Tay. I get what you're saying. Did the move they make do that? Improve the roster? Did trading Bilal improve you got 2 players, you give up 3, you get 2 back. You're not addressing the second base position. No. That is why I sit here and I have to feel like there is a corresponding move because, like my notes said, they were comfortable keeping him. They said his contract was reasonable. Okay. I don't think this was a dump because they were scared of the money or anything. This is a domino. I tweeted when it came out that a gif of a domino falling. It was a domino. Okay, we'll circle back to that. I just think it's really, really funny looking back on my notes, hindsight, and now providing a little bit of context. Now, since we're still in the past, I didn't get to talk about the Rays getting the 2nd overall pick in the draft lottery. Fabulous. Can I just say the White Sox deserve the first pick, so I'm not even upset about it. The only thing I'm upset about is I did think seeing Brett Phillips do the airplane would have been iconic, so we did miss out on that. We haven't picked that high in a while, and when we did, we missed out on a little guy named Buster Posey. I'm excited to see what they do with this, okay? Or it's going to be a joke going forward, but just like a nice surprise. Obviously, it's a lottery. I think they had like a 3% chance of getting the first overall pick, so I'll take it. I just had more things about the ownership group and just kind of like their presence at meetings and things like that. I don't really, I could go on and on and on and on about them and what I think they're doing and stuff. And I think I'm going to talk about that as we go on in this episode. It's just going to be all intertwined. As you're seeing, everything, this should be called the Intertwined episode because everything is intertwined. Everything is connected. Now let's go through my thoughts that I didn't even get a chance to print out because I was like, okay, I got to get this done. All right, so let's start with what I feel like the core theme is with what happened this week. The Rays and Eric are making it very clear that they are in a talent accumulation mode, okay? And I know to the average person, you want to scream. Like, that is the worst possible thing to hear. Like, oh, here we go again. We're prospect hoarding. And that, like, it's not fun to hear that. I get it, okay? You can only bank on prospects for so long. You can only hoard them for so long. It's not a woo-hoo. Although I do think the Shane Baz trade is woo-hoo for sure. I say that, they say, talent acquiring mode. However, I think it's very important to realize they are balancing the 2026 competitiveness with a longer term reset towards 2027 and beyond. Before we go into the trades and before we go in to break anything else down, I want to say when the trades came across and people's immediate reaction was the Rays are tanking, the Rays are punting, the Rays don't care, the Rays yada yada yada. I understand to a degree that it sucks to see these names that are leaving. Okay, all the players that the Rays traded. It wasn't I don't know who that is because it's a prospect, yada yada yada. Brandon, Shane, Jake, Mason. And it feels, I guess, insulting. Like, how dare them? They're moving the players. You have to remember that in this case, I don't even know if I want to break this down, but what I want to say overall before we break down the trades. New ownership has had the keys to this fleet for going on 3 months. Not very long at all. I would say they've been decently forthcoming about the baseball operations side. We're going to let Eric do his thing. He is good at it. We've seen him do it. Budget is around the same. Payroll's around the same. Maybe there's some slight flexibility. But their main focus, if we take a wide lens on this, their main focus has been getting the Trop back to original form, which, by the way, had to be done no matter what. What didn't have to be done is all of the money that they've privately funded to hopefully make the Trop better in different ways, be it experience or aesthetics, just changing your last memory of the Trop into something better because they know they're going to be there the next few seasons. They know that they have a stadium that needs to be built. I have a very hard time personally thinking that they're going to intentionally tank this team, knowingly put a bad product on the field, while also trying to build and rebuild, by all means, excitement and fandom at its very core. It doesn't make much sense for them to completely whiff on an entire season while simultaneously undertaking something that is so dependent on the fans. It just doesn't make sense, okay? If you don't walk into Tropicana Field next year and at the very least feel the Rays have a chance, that's not going to help their cause for the next few seasons at the Trop and beyond, wherever they end up in the Bay Area. So this knee-jerk reaction that they don't care, they're just as bad as the old ownership, I just don't think that makes sense. I have a hard time believing that their strategy to buy this team and drop all this money, simultaneously privately fund these improvements while also about to write a huge check on whatever they do with the stadium, with the ballpark, is to insult the fans and generate a bad team knowingly. I just don't see it in their best interest. Now, yes, we can talk about how the American League East took a couple years off, it felt like, and teams like Toronto are spending. Baltimore came out swinging in this offseason. The Yankees are the Yankees. People are waiting for the Red Sox to do something, which they did. They got Wilson Contreras last night. Laying low here doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe this whole thing I just said is my opinion, and I'm not saying that I think that you should have my opinion because my opinion is right, but I think it makes me feel a little bit better to be like, well, I don't think they're just evil laughing and well, we're shipping off these fan favorites because we want a prospect horde and just give them nothing to look forward to. I think like I said, there's a balancing act. You have to balance this upcoming season and remain competitive, but you also have to think about the trajectory of this franchise and where they want to be 2027, 28, when there's a stadium in 2029. It's all intertwined. I'm not giving an excuse to say next year's going to suck, because I don't think it is. I think you don't go and sign Mullins. You don't go and sign Matz. You don't do these things if you really don't care, because you've got tons of depth. Is it depth that's necessarily ready? I don't think so. But, you don't even have to do anything. You could just sit with yourself where you are and just say, we'll hope for the best. And I just don't think that's in their best interest as an organization and what they're trying to do. But anyway, let's move on to what happened. As I said earlier, Brandon Lowe was traded to the Pirates. Shane Baz was traded to the Orioles. So let's start with Brandon. He was an all-star, and he's always going to be a name associated with the Rays. He is an all-time Ray. I think when he was traded initially, I was so focused on this being something that needed to happen, the first shoe to drop, because we'll get to what I think or hope is going to happen. I was so focused on, okay, it's done. All right, rip the Band-Aid off. I was very much in a rip the Band-Aid off. Okay, this is how the next thing's going to go, and it's just going to start flowing. Moves are going to start happening. That when I sat and thought about it, it is sad, okay? To think that B-Lau has played his last game as a Ray and we didn't even know it. He played his last game at the Trop and we didn't even realize it then. And, he's a two-time All-Star. What I think is so funny about B-Lau is that, I have a video of Pete Fairbanks that I tweeted of him saying, he's so grumpy. And, I think it comes down to just he really was such a dog. Okay, I know that was his nickname, and we all loved to bark and woof and whenever he would hit one out. But he was just no frills baseball player. He loved to play. He was a little bit grumpy, if you will, but I think it was just all part of his edge. I think it's starting to hit me personally, he's going to be in a Pirates uniform and he's not going to be on the team and he's not going to report to spring training down in Port Charlotte, and that is sad. But he's been with the team for 8 seasons. That's why a lot of those feelings are what they are. A lot of the reactions about this is why you don't buy Rays jerseys. This is a case where he played 8 seasons with the Rays, and he, got accolades as an all-star and leading the team in different categories and just being that quiet but reliable guy for so long. Like, honestly, so long. 8 seasons is nothing to diminish or act like that wasn't a lot. Rays fans kind of have a knee-jerk reaction because they are used to, unfortunately, trading your favorite players or whatever the case may be. But you had 8 seasons to get this man's jersey. You had 8 seasons to watch him play and perform for us and show up in big moments and all of those things. If the Rays felt like it was time at this point, last season of his contract, his age, whatever it may be, I feel like this was truly not one to have the knee-jerk reaction to. Are you entitled to the emotions that come with it? Of course. Like I said, I can't believe we're not going to see him in a Rays uniform again. What do you mean? He's always been in one. But the thought of, ownership hasn't changed and, will always be like this. I think that is not considering so many more things, especially, like I said, him being with the team for 8 seasons and who knows what's going to happen with him and the Pirates or his future beyond. And I hope it's great and wonderful. I do think Brandon and his family are gems. It's a timeless jersey. It's a timeless Rays jersey. And if you have one, I don't feel that you should feel like you've been cursed or you qualify for the jersey curse, because nothing will get worse than the number 5 jersey curse. Now, I will say, I know people, and I talked about this earlier in this episode, people freaking love Jake Mangum, and I freaking love Jake Mangum. He was always so kind. He was always great with fans. He was always available and accessible and just like someone who really had such perspective on being a almost 30-year-old rookie that he was easy to cheer for. And he out hustled anyone and everyone, because I think that perspective and just kind of the way he played and who he was as a person, that's what we saw every single night, that it was hard not to root for the guy. And we all love him. And I'm happy in a way that he's going with Bilal and he's going with Monty and they're all going to Pittsburgh. And again, do I think that you even know that name or we saw him as much as we did last year if we didn't have a freaking exodus of injuries? No, but maybe he was at probably the peak value that he was going to have. I hope not. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope his value only continues to increase. He's an on-base king. The way he runs out a ball in the dirt in front of home plate is incredible. And there's so many things about him that are fun to watch, and I will certainly miss watching him play. We all will. And I don't think that they were ever going to figure out Monty necessarily. I do think he's electric. I personally loved watching Mason Montgomery throw. I have to believe that they were comfortable with this. Like my note said from 2 weeks ago, the Rays weren't going to move Bilal if they were not comfortable with the deal presented to them. They were fine with his contract. They were probably fine with some of those question marks, I guess, that I was saying earlier. So I have to believe that no one twisted their arm to make this happen and to throw in 2 additional players to make it happen. It was sadly time, but it was time. Now, the Shane Baz trade is crazy. Okay, so you have, let's paint the scene. You have a Baltimore Orioles team who's very much come out swinging and said, okay, last season, not so good, not so hot. Wasn't, and they're right. Who do they sign? The polar bear? The polar bear spotted in Baltimore? They signed Pete Alonso. That's a big deal. That's a big shuffle, okay? But if you know the Baltimore Orioles rotation, it was like, okay, well, are their games going to have to be like 17-16? Because who's pitching for them? Who do they have in that rotation that, you can rely on? Like even just one day. You don't take a big hack at signing Pete Alonso and just say, oh, this is fine. This rotation is fine. This pitching staff is fine. I think we got the Orioles at and I don't want to use the term desperation because I don't want it to sound like I'm putting them down, but they're in a position where they need starting pitching. They need to make this all work out if they were going to make the move. we present you Shane Baz, who is young, he's controllable, he's projected as a frontline starter, he's bright and shiny. What do you want for him? And they said, how about 4 prospects and a pick in the upcoming draft, the 33rd pick in the upcoming draft. We said sold. We don't even have to go back and forth, in my opinion. Sold. The Rays got brought in from this one trade, one player in Shane Baz. They got back the Rays' new number 7 prospect now in our farm system, who has a 6-pitch mix, throws 6 different pitches. Okay, we got a switch hitting catcher that I think they're going to try to bank on. They have, I think homegrown is the way we got to go going forward, but that's a whole separate thing. They got someone who is been considered or compared with Corbin Carroll. And they also got a 4th player that I'm blanking on. And then, like I said, they got a pick. They essentially got 5 players for 1. For Shane Baz. The problem with this, though, and with a lot of fans, is you see 4 prospects and a pick, and you're like, it doesn't satisfy the instant gratification. Now, for respectfully, the nerds who love their prospects, they're going crazy. They're loving this. They're saying, what a haul. They're giving you all of these different things because they know the names, they know the values, and they say, wow, I can't believe that they flipped Baz for all that. To your average fan, again, you see 4 names that you've never heard of before. You're hearing that, they're not MLB ready right this second, and it's like going through the motions of like this again. I get it. But the depth that they just provided for themselves in 2027, 2028, what I was talking about, where they're trying to build up this momentum to, I think, a very exciting point in the Rays franchise, that makes sense to me. Got it. I understand that. Do you know what else it does? Prospect courting also puts you in a position to make further moves with said prospects. There's a chance some of these guys never even put on a Rays uniform. It's December 22nd. There's a chance that some of these guys never wear a Rays uniform because other people may want them. We'll get to that. So, like I said, we signed Steven Matz to a contract. He's probably going to start. He wants to start. It sounds like the Rays want him to start. I think, though, when I had my notes before, I said, okay, signing him creates a little bit more, less pressure on Baz, less pressure on Pepio, yada, 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 and that they still probably wanted to trade or possibly acquire another veteran arm. I think it's interesting, too, because it sounds like, or it feels like, they're confident in Shane returning. You got Drew, you have Pep, you've lost Baz. You're banking on Shane being back. However, I think he's going to be limited on innings. You move Matz in there. Do you move Ian Seymour? I know a lot of my friends want to see Ian Seymour pitch, start, be in the rotation. I don't know. I do have a lot of just like, how is the rotation going to shake out? I think there's options there. I just don't know which direction they're going to go, but it's nice to have options. I'm thinking, though, from what I'm seeing, there's still a chance they sign another veteran arm, and maybe that makes more sense because I do feel, well, it's a no-brainer. Shane's going to be on a limited workload in 2026. He's been out for 2 seasons with an injury, one of which was like a freak. I don't even call it a freak injury. It was just like an unknown injury, like this doesn't happen, but it did happen. He had some kind of like nerve surgery. I don't even think it was a surgery. It was like some kind of procedure, I guess would be the better word. In August, he's feeling good. He's been throwing. He's been posting videos of him throwing. He's supposed to hit the mound in the beginning of the year. Still means he's going to be on that limited workload. How the rotation comes to be and how it's shuffled is just intriguing to me. I don't have too much of a opinion on it yet, mostly because I've been like thinking about the outfield so much. I think that we are also not considering, here's the thing. I don't think, again, the average fan is aware of this, has read about this, who knows about this, anything. I hope you can still hear me because I'm putting this down because my hair is driving me nuts. Anywho, the Rays, it came out that the Rays had pursued Jorge Polanco, who ended up signing with the New York Mets to play first base. The Rays had pursued Polanco to play second base, and this is before the Lowe trade even happened. And they were willing to offer him the same amount of money that he ultimately got from the Mets. I believe he got 20. I think we were offering like 15 for Jorge Polanco. We were willing to shell out what I think is a decent amount of money, especially if you're considering you moved Bilal and his $11.5 million contract. You're willing to give more money to Jorge Polanco. And you're trying to tell me that this team is not serious and that they don't want to be competitive and that they're punting? But does the average person know that, or like understand the implications of being in a almost bidding war or a comparable situation with the New York Mets for a first baseman when the Mets have lost their star first baseman, which again, that's a whole problem with like the Mets organization, but someone that the Mets desperately needed. And do I think it's a little funny that Polanco is who is filling in or is now going to be their first baseman after losing Pete Alonso? Yes, but the fact that the Rays were willing to shell out a decent contract to have him as well to play second and not first, that's not for nothing. That doesn't mean like there's some context there, okay? There's some money spending there, okay? So with that being said, we're going to end on the speculation. What is this hair? This is the hair that's been bothering me. Let's end on the speculation. Let's end on some fun. Maybe you put it into the universe and maybe it happens, or maybe the universe just looks at you and goes, good try. So the Rays have moved Brandon Lowe. They have a hole at second base. I really, really don't want to go into spring training with Richie Palacios as my second baseman. The depth not going much farther than that. Personally, like I love Richie. I think he's a great utility guy, and that's how I want to use him. I do not want to use him as my everyday second baseman. I just don't think that's a good idea. Okay? And that's nothing towards him. It's just, really? That's where you lose me. Now, again, I have a hard time thinking that they sign Mullins, they get Matz, that they take in such a haul for Shane and move him, that they move Bilal when they didn't need to or have to, but see the pieces they got in return, Anderson, Brito, and Melton. I don't think, again, not for nothing. So that leads us with, again, what I just said. They were in on Jorge Polanco. They were going to give him a decent contract by the Rays standards. They pull the trigger after knowing they couldn't get Polanco. Polanco signs with the Mets. I think he has ties to New York, and it was nothing more than that. They lose out on Polanco. No, they know they did. That's in the past. They still go forward with this Brandon Lowe trade. What have we heard? The Rays and the Red Sox are front runners in conversation with the D-backs for Ketel Marte. Now, I said his name. It took me 47 minutes to say his name. So Ketel has been the name. And I think for most people that I know who are following, who know about the Polanco news, who know about, the implications around the different moves that we've made, again, the Bilal trade almost felt like less of a blow because we had already been hearing that we have been in talks with the Diamondbacks for potentially trading for Ketel Marte. Because now we're all like hungry hippos, and we're like, okay, like I was saying earlier, Bilal gets shipped off, and I don't even mourn at first because I'm like, yes. This is like the what's that guy, the actor of the gif of him, Nicholson, where he's just like grinning and smiling. That was me instead of mourning the loss of Bilal, because now you have a hole at second base where you had previously said, we're not trading Brandon if we don't have to, because we know we're going to have a hole at second base. But you did. And you did it after you couldn't sign who you thought you were going to backfill with Polanco, but you still did it anyway. You've done all these other moves. You've reconstructed every part, seemingly, of the roster, minus your core locks and Aranda and Cammy and Yandi. We got movement everywhere. We've got competition coming up for the plethora of outfielders we have. Um, and then you kind of shook up the infield because do you have Taylor Walls play at second base as well? I didn't even think about that. Um, I just don't think you're doing all of this stuff to roll out. To roll out Palacios at second or even Walls at second. I just don't think that you are. So, sorry, tangent. That's why the name Ketel Marte is so intriguing to us, to your average, or not even your average fan, to the fans that have been reading the headlines. Now, as of last night, the Red Sox traded for Wilson Contreras with the Cards. I had slowly shifted my attention from Ketel to Donovan, mostly because it is rumored that the D-backs want so much for Ketel, and rightfully so. He is a beautiful contract, and it fits in right into the Rays' payroll and how they're going to move going forward, and the D-backs know that. And if you want him, then, like, they want starting pitching, and they want this, that, and the other. They also want a guy, it's been rumored, that they want an Aranda or someone like him, and I don't see the Rays aren't going to make themselves worse to get Ketel. You know? He's a core guy. Aranda's a core guy. It's almost like it just doesn't make any sense. Do they want Pep? They probably want Pep. We just got rid of Shane. Are we signing another veteran pitcher, starter, as backfill for a potential Pep trade? Are we willing to part ways with like a Brody Hopkins who is highly ranked in our farm system, who is, projected to be an ace? But at the same time, the Rays also have acquired guys who will provide depth prospect wise. So does it make the blow of trading a Hopkins less? Like, there's so many questions here. And I think the Rays, here's what I'll say. I think the Rays really want Marte. Okay. Were they trying to get out of it with like a Polanco? Yes. There has been no conversation linking the Rays and Donovan, which I think is interesting. I think they want him, but I think they also, in a good way, are going to not just give up the highest amount for him. So it's kind of a tricky slope. And then I also could feel like the D-backs just end up keeping Ketel. And then it's kind of like, well, what do we do then? That's what scares me the most, is that the Diamondbacks don't like our counter offers, whatever they may be. They can just keep him. I mean, great contract. There's a little bit of question marks with how he gets along with that clubhouse, and that might honestly be the reason they trade him. But they could hold on to him, and then we're kind of SOL in a way. But I do think that there are other options out there that are not just getting enough attention because they're not as a big of a name as Ketel Marte or even Donovan. But there are options out there, I think, if the Rays really need them. But my worry is, again, like I said, when you traded Bilal, it lessened the blow for a lot of us who have been on the Marte market, if you will. And so, I think these few days have been like, okay, we're really hot on Martel, and like this is going to happen and it's going to be great, and like that's what we need. Bring it here. But then it's kind of turned into like, well, Rays can't do that trade if it makes no sense for them. So then you kind of hit that realism train, that realistic, like, okay, well, if they won't budge on who they want from us, then like we can't even blame them for not making that trade. So then you go through those motions, and then now we're kind of looking, personally, I'm kind of looking at like what other options are out there for the Rays to fill the hole or at least create some competition at second base. So we'll see what happens. I think they're trying their best, but again, their best doesn't mean that they need to act out of desperation and give up who I think is going to be a core player for them for a while. So we'll see what happens. That's kind of all I have to say on that. my biggest takeaway is that I have my notes here because I don't want to misspeak. The Rays have and are reshaping their roster for the short term and the long term. They've obviously traded two major pieces in Brandon Lowe and Shane Baz. Both of those trades bring upsize and replenish their farm system with long-term prospects. At the same time, they have added dependable veterans in Matz and Mullins and Fraley to stay competitive. I think they make one more move and they prove that they want to stay competitive, but also they want to think about what is to come in the future, in the Rays' future. So it's a balancing act. It's a controlled reset, rolling out what you have because you're in a point of kind of desperation or your back's against the wall. Not great. And I think that's why you've had this like reset, this shuffling, this um acquiring of who we have because they don't want to go through what they went through last year. So let's bring in some new faces. Let's bring in some new arms. Let's bring in some new bats and create a little bit of competition and shake things around, but also plan for our future. And maybe they sign a big bat, a decent name, and really we can put our best foot forward going out there in 2026. Going to see how these next few weeks shake out, but going forward, there's a lot of question marks that will be answered in spring. And I really feel like it's nice because it's like, I want to see increased competition. There was no competition last year, really. In the spring, the outfield was pretty much set. You had your Christopher Morel, you had your Jonathan DeLuca, and you had your Josh Lowe. And you knew that that was probably going to be it. And then they dropped like flies. They didn't perform the way that they were supposed to. Hurt, bring in new guys. Palacios goes down. Your utility guy goes down. Like all of these things. And that's what they had to deal with in the middle of the season. Okay. That's a terrible feeling. I think they decided we don't want to feel like that again. Now we have all of these pieces. They're all going to have to prove themselves. They're all going to have to figure out how they work in this roster and how they fit in, how they plug in. And so I think spring training as of right now is going to be very, very interesting because there's competition there and there's options there and there's new faces, like I was just saying there. But again, I'm going to hope something big happens. It's exciting. Like, it's not like I'm trying to tell you not to be excited or that, like, I'm trying to make excuses, I guess. I want them to sign all of the people I was talking about. Yeah, of course. That's really, really exciting. That'd be big for the Rays. But I also think on the opposite end of that spectrum, being so Debbie Downer, being so uh just like pessimistic is also not helpful, I guess. And I'm hoping at the end of the day, I'm hoping that what I said or maybe some context that I could help with helps you feel a little bit better. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just so burned and rough around the edges in terms of like watching Rays players leave or trying my best to understand why certain things happen. Maybe that's my own thing. But if some context can help you kind of put this all together and what it means, great. So if it's not all making sense to you right now, that's totally normal and totally fine. I think there's a lot to be determined, like I've said earlier. See how this is all intertwined. This is why I wanted to call it like the intertwined episode. Anything can happen going on to tomorrow or next week, but also the first of the year right around the corner. A couple like miscellaneous things you can totally sign off if you want to. I thought this was really interesting. I saw this in one of Topper's articles, and so I attribute him. Joe Madden is open to an advisory role. I could go on a whole thing about Joe, and I might. I saw Joe this past weekend. I'll try to put in a picture if I can. I love Joe. Love Joe Madden so much. I don't have to tell you. He's an integral part of the Rays, who they are now, their identity. They're like on the map seasons where, everyone paid attention to us. And he was such an integral part of that. But he apparently is amenable to advising the new ownership, which is very symbolic more than anything. But I just think when you talk to Joe, he has such an idea about this organization and about this franchise, and he's watched what I've watched growing up, right? Like, I feel like his seasons of him coaching, of him managing, were the years that I was very formidable. And I was kind of gathering my thoughts about like what this organization is, what their identity is, how they operate, and things like that. And he knows it as well, probably obviously better than I do. He's been a part of it in it. And so he had his Thanksmas event last week, and he was asked about the stadium, and he has always, for years, he has been such an advocate the Rays need a new stadium. He honestly didn't love the Trop. Like, he hated the catwalks, he hated the different rings, like, he is not a fan of the Trop. He was nice enough to appreciate when they would put some money into it, but he was not a fan. I have like newspapers of him talking about like, this is why they need a new stadium. This is why they need a new stadium. Someone asked him, I think Evan Klosky did, about what do they need in this new ballpark, or what is his take on the new stadium situation. And his biggest thing, and I'm going to say it and you're going to go, duh, obviously, but he said, where can they build a stadium that people can get to, that is accessible to people after work, and that they can get home easily? Duh, right? Like, no duh. But I think we have spent so much time going back and forth about which side is better, which side deserves the stadium, like this, that, and the other. And I know money's involved and the government's involved, and I'm not good at any of that. I've taught myself a lot about it, unfortunately, because of all of the back and forth. But truly, at its core, it needs to be something that the fans can get to accessibly, like families with children who are getting out of school, who have school the next day. It's so hard to think about all of the different ways baseball operates. Obviously, having 81 home games is crazy, okay? No other professional sports league can even compare to that, right? So you have to appeal and be accessible to so many people day in and day out, not just on weekends, but during the week as well. And you want to be growing the game. So you want to be appealing to families with children who are at a formidable age where they want to keep being a baseball fan and watching baseball, but you can't have them out till midnight, because by the time you pick them up, you may not even have enough time, depending on where you are, to stop and get dinner, or to make dinner, to have a dinner. So you're stopping to get dinner, or you're eating at the ballpark, and ballpark food is not always the most conducive to feeding a family of 4, or really even a couple. It gets very pricey. Shout out Kim Babby, though. I think he's going to work on that. Not sure yet, but he's had a career of making ballpark food affordable. And so maybe that factors into, like, we know that you're in a hurry to get here to us. Let's make the food at the ballpark affordable for the families. But anyway, you have all of that, and then you're at the game. You watch the game, which the games are faster now, which is good. But, depending on where you're coming from, you could be home very, very late, and it's Tuesday night, and your kids and you have to go to work tomorrow. So it's like not attractive for that. Or you can appeal to the people who already live in the area, who are people who live downtown or just outside of the downtown area, wherever that may be, and can afford to take a 10-minute Uber ride and drink and have fun, and then make it home, and then want to do it the next night, or maybe do it a couple nights a week. Joe saying that just really dumbs it down. That's what it's going to come down to. I think a lot of what I've said about player personnel and payroll and all of these different things comes down to, and what I feel like is very exciting as a fan, is the fans. Okay? They have to appeal to us right now. If that's on the field product, or if that's how they're going to construct the way and the future of this franchise, it comes down to us. If we can't show up, if we can't spend money, if we can't like what's being shown, all of their endeavors, their entire investment goes to shit. Sorry, it does. Maybe I just haven't said this bluntly. We have leverage as fans. That's why I think thinking that they want to field a bad product when they need us the most, when they need ticket sales and they need butts and chairs and food sales up and vending and merch, and they need us. It's in their best interest to appeal to us and to appeal to the masses long term so that they can keep the flow. We have leverage as fans, and that's why I'm putting on that thinking cap and thinking that way when I think about all of the different moves that we're seeing and what's to come, is that they have to appeal to us, or otherwise it's a waste. And you have someone like Ken Babby, who has spent his career testing things out at the minor league level and having success with it, who's now going to be able to put that at the forefront of a major league franchise. Great. I can't wait to see it. But as soon as they start whiffing and as soon as they show that I'm wrong and that they don't care about, the fans or anything, I won't stand for that. I will be very vocal about it. But as we sit right now, it's a very much like prove it to me deal. And that makes me feel confident. I think immediately comparing them to the old ownership is you're doing a disservice to yourself. You have someone who's invested in the team, put a lot of money into this team, and it's all dependent on how the fans take to it. That's way different. That's what makes the moves, to me, not the same as we've seen in the past. I don't know if that helps you. I don't know if that makes sense. But that's the way that I've chosen to look at it. And again, if I'm wrong and they do bad, I've said this before, fine. They will feel my fury. I literally think I've said that. They will feel my wrath. But maybe you put on the same thinking cap as I have, and it helps you a little bit. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We're all entitled to our own opinion. That's the thing. But context helps, and I just think that looking at this from a wide lens helps as well. We will see. Hopefully, maybe next episode. I don't know. It's too soon to Christmas. There's nothing going to happen this week. So I don't know if there will be enough to talk about this upcoming week, but maybe that presents me to ask you a question on like what you want to see, what you want me to talk about. I also want to shout out, I know I was delayed in making this and it's super long and I'm super sorry, but the amount of people who messaged me or commented and said, when are you going to do another episode, was really nice. I really appreciate that. And it wasn't my parents. Although my mom did call me out a couple days ago and she was just like, you haven't done an episode in a while. And I was like, pause. They take some time, like clearly recording them. And then I go back and make sure I don't like do anything weird. Probably going to try to edit how many times I touch my hair. But it was just so nice that people wanted to hear. So thank you. If you have any ideas, it's crazy to me though, because it's like the holidays, the new year. It's really just the month of January, and then by February, we're revving up for World Baseball Classic spring training. So I could really use kind of like your ideas or what you like to see, what you don't want to see. I'll probably be I need to talk to Elijah, but he bought podcasting or vlogging mics or something. So like we could do something with that. I definitely want to get him on an episode with me to maybe preview the season and talk about our thoughts on the off season, or just talk about our thoughts as literal lifelong Rays fans. I'm so jealous of Elijah because he has photos of when he was like a baby. I don't think my parents were like thinking that my life was going to revolve around the Rays as much as it has. So I don't have like any really throwbacks. I just have like newspapers and like memorabilia from the early seasons and me, but no pictures and stuff. But anyway, we could talk about that. I'm probably going to make it out to a lot of spring training stuff. I usually go to the first day of full squad workouts, mostly just to, I don't know, actually that's like my favorite thing to do. I went last year for the first time by myself. Usually I go with other people, but it was just so therapeutic. The drive sucks. Don't get me wrong. Driving to Port Charlotte is so bad. I could have talked about how like Al Lang is possibly being floated around as a spring training site again. I'll save that for a future episode. But anyway, I went last year by myself and it was just so therapeutic just to be by myself. I could wander the fields that I want to, see all the guys and just like the vibes and just knowing that baseball was around the corner. So I'll probably do that again. I kind of want to make it out to more away. It's all local, but like away spring training facilities, because I only do that a handful of times, surprisingly. I don't know if I'll go back to Steinbrenner. I know the Rays play there like the 6th of March or something. I need a break. I don't even think like I don't even think I can joke about visiting Steinbrenner. Like I just need to separate myself. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on what you would like to see, what content I can provide. I really want to go full throttle this year. I might have some exciting things happening this year that I can't really talk about yet. But yeah, thanks for watching. This was such a long episode, but this is what I get for missing a couple weeks and just like things were happening. So I had to recap all that. But thank you for listening if you made it this far. And kudos to my dad for telling me that I have to sign off and say goodbye. So goodbye. I hope maybe we have something to talk about this weekend. If not, give me some thoughts. Maybe I can just do like a fun episode this upcoming Sunday. So anyway, let me know. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for listening. And let me know if you have any questions or takes or whatever. I love to hear them.